After a long legal battle, a 5-year-old girl abducted from Turkey is back home with her mother. The child, Rachael, was abducted by her father, Saeed Abedini, an Iranian pastor who made international headlines when he was jailed for his faith from 2012 to 2016. At the time, Saeed was the poster child for religious persecution. But as I reported previously, behind the headlines was a dark secret. Saeed had emotionally, spiritually, and physically abused his wife, Naghmeh Panahi. Yet, when she divulged his secret to the public, the Christian community turned on her. And when Saeed returned to the U.S. in 2016, Christian leaders like Franklin Graham pressured Naghmeh to reconcile with her unrepentant husband. Meanwhile, Naghmeh found herself in the fight of her life, not just for her own safety, but the safety of her children. And the entire time, she was terrified that what happened recently to Rachael's mother would happen to her, that Saeed would abduct her children and take them to a foreign country. Well, not only did Naghmeh win the fight for her own children, today you will hear how she and a remarkable attorney recently won the battle to return Rachael to her Iranian mother, who's a refugee in Turkey. Welcome to the Roys Report, a podcast dedicated to reporting the truth and restoring the church. I'm Julie Roys. Well, joining me today is Naghmeh Panahi, someone I met through my reporting of her story in 2021. But since then, she's become a friend and someone I respect and admire for her passion for Jesus and also for her passion for protecting the vulnerable. So Naghmeh, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you join me.
Thanks for having me again.
And also joining me is Devin Ruud-Slavensky, the attorney who represented Rachael's mother, Nilüfer Arag, in her custody battle with Saeed Abedini. And Devin, Naghmeh told me that you're the best lawyer that she's ever worked with. And I know that she's worked with a lot of lawyers, so that's really high praise. And I'm just so glad that you could join us as well.
Well, I can certainly say that I don't think we would have had the level of success that we were able to have in this case if it wasn't for Naghmeh and her support going through and really just helping us understand the lay of the land when we dove into this case.
Well, she is a fighter. That's one thing I've learned about Naghmeh. And when she fights to win because she's often fighting for justice and for really this is for the good of a 5-year-old girl, which is just amazing. But I'm thinking for both of you, this ruling by a federal judge on July 10th that Rachael should be immediately returned to her mother in Turkey must have felt like an amazing victory. And it's such a heartwarming story to see, again, this 5-year-old girl who's been separated from her mother for like a year and a half to return back to, again, her mother and this situation where she can be with the rest of her family, her brother as well. And I can only imagine, like I have a daughter who's 24 right now. She's an adult. She lives in a different state. That's hard enough for me. But when she was 5, and I guess Rachael's 5 now, but she was 3.5 when she was abducted. Is that right, Naghmeh?
Yes, she was 3.5.
So 3.5, I mean, I can't even imagine the emotional. I mean, I would have been like out of my mind if somebody took my 3.5-year-old girl. And to imagine that here they were separated for 18 months, not knowing if she'd ever come home, and then to see the court rule in her favor and her, I mean, it wasn't even a long process at that point. It was like immediately returned. Talk about that, Naghmeh, how you must have felt in that moment when the judge said that she could return home.
I couldn't believe it. I'm getting emotional talking about it. We didn't think a year and a half ago this was going to happen. I didn't know if Rachael was going to return to her mom. And then even that day, before he made the ruling, he was talking about a possible hearing on the following Thursday and maybe the next day. And so as he was considering continuing the court hearing, I was just praying and, like I didn't know if he was going to rule that day because he was talking about, having another court meeting to decide in the following days. But when he came back and what he said that, Saeed has not followed court orders, that his decision was that Rachael to be returned immediately was a miracle. We were holding our breath, hoping that he would say that, but it didn't seem like it until the last moment when he actually said it.
And I know your heart is for this little girl and for her mother, but in a way, this is kind of vindication for you, isn't it? I mean, because that was your concern many years ago when a lot of people turned on you when you said who Saeed really was and what he was doing. They wouldn't believe you. Now, I mean, do you feel like this is vindication to say, hey, this man is who I said he was?
And also vindication to myself because everything I did was covered by media. So when I did a protection order, when I did a legal separation, knowing that Saeed had actually threatened that he was going to take the kids and take him to another country where I couldn't reach them, I was criticized by it that I would do that to this amazing Christian pastor, hero, persecuted Christian. And then when I did it, it was like a miracle the day I did it because I got a phone call by Reuters saying Saeed is.
I remember this.
It was a random phone call from Reuters asking me, how are you feeling about Saeed coming to Boise? And I said, no, he's not. He's in North Carolina. And he said, no, he's on a private jet with, Franklin Graham has confirmed his office that he's headed to Boise. And having been on Franklin's private jets, I knew I didn't have much time. And so within moments, I had a friend, Sarah, we went and got the protection order. We got the legal separation. I went to my lawyer's office. And this was a lawyer that I hadn't secured yet. I had just talked to, and she had said, if Saeed comes to town, the only thing that's going to keep the kids in Idaho, in their school, in their current home is a legal separation. And so within hours, I got those. Come home and Saeed is right there. If I didn't have the protection order in my hands, like within minutes, Saeed parks right next to me with bodyguards from Franklin. And if I didn't have the protection order and the legal separation in my hand, he could have taken the kids. What he did with Rachael, he could have said, "Well, I'm their father. I can take him." And he had a private jet. He didn't have to go through the airports. Put him on the plane and flown them to wherever he wanted to. And then I would have had to try to find them and try to get them back, which would have, taken years. So for me, it was also a vindication to my own gut feeling in a way that, God really, I believe, put that in there. Just it seemed like harsh to do such a thing with like this persecuted pastor coming out of prison, but to do that and then to know, wow, he actually did kidnap a child of Rachael. And so it was a vindication to myself as well. And I did email Franklin Graham and I CC'd Anne and I said, Anne Graham Lotz. And I recently, when I was fundraising, and I said, hey, this could have happened to our family.
When you were fundraising for Rachael.
Yeah, when I was fundraising for Rachael to be able to get her home, I emailed Franklin Graham and CC'd Anne Graham Lotz. And I said, I don't expect you to reply, but this is a good opportunity for you to repent and to do good for Rachael, at least, because you stood by Saeed. A lot of people didn't know. And this happened. This is a result of you not being vocal about the dangers of Saeed and actually supporting him. So I gave him an opportunity for him to help with the fundraiser or do something. And he didn't respond. And I told him, I said, this is knowing you. Anne Graham has responded before and said, I'm so sorry, but not on this one. But I gave him an opportunity to repent and try to do something right for this little girl.
Wow. That's not surprising given your whole ordeal. And folks, by the way, if you haven't heard this story, we recorded a podcast back in 2021 of everything that happened to you, actually multiple podcasts. Such a powerful story. And I remember that part of the story. And unbelievable. Here you are, 2016, this is a decade ago. And Saeed comes home. And I still can't wrap my head around it, around the brazenness of Franklin to get him on a private jet, come there with private bodyguards, and what was their intent other than to take the kids, and maybe they thought they could convince you to come with them, or I don't know, but again, just unbelievable how this has turned out. You stood your ground. You are an amazing woman, Naghmeh. I mean, you are an amazing woman. And you stood your ground. You fought for what you knew it was right, and you fought for your kids. And your kids, I know, play an important part in this whole
They
story
do.
too. And it sounds to me like your daughter has your heart, which praise the Lord that happened, because these things can turn out a lot of different ways and kids can go a lot of different ways. But that makes me so happy to hear that. But how sad I am that Franklin, it's so aggravating because, again, Saeed was the poster child. And this was a Cinderella story when he came home, and Christians had won his release through all their lobbying, and there are also political things in play as well, but
Very political.
very political. But when it was a story that gave him a platform and helped him fundraise, boy, Franklin was there. Now, when we have a little girl, a 5-year-old girl who needs to be returned to her mother and has been abducted by this same man, who, by the way, this was not a woman he was married to, this was his girlfriend. So, I mean, just as a pastor, to have a child out of wedlock, I mean, to me, speaks of something of his character. But then again, to steal this child, and you gave him a chance, Franklin Graham, to repent and to do the right thing, and still Franklin Graham isn't doing the right thing. I don't know why I would expect differently, but it's just so aggravating. But again, so excited with the outcome of what just happened July 10th. And Devin, I know you worked so hard, and from what I'm understanding too, it sounds like this might have been a little personal for you. How did you feel when the judge ruled in your favor, or in your
We were
client's
delighted.
favor?
We
Yeah.
were delighted. Cases like this can take a long time. They're supposed to take 6 weeks under international law. And that's why this is in federal court. This is really a question of international law at this level.
Mm.
We're talking about international child abduction. And the guideline is 6 weeks. But Saeed had told the court, he had hired an attorney and had spoken to an attorney at some point. And the whole strategy was going to be to drag this case out as long as they possibly could, and then eventually be able to say, well, Rachael is doing great here, so why would we send her anywhere else? And I'm so grateful that the court did not allow this, to continue. Drove the case quickly, as is required under international law. And I'm so delighted we could get the result the day we could. What Naghmeh was talking about is absolutely correct. The judge was indicating that he wanted to make sure that, both attorneys had enough time to say everything they wanted to say about the case. And I was there at the end of the day saying, Judge, I don't have anything else to say about the case. I just want your ruling. This child has been abducted and it's time to send her home. I don't need a couple of more hours in front of you to tell you anymore, because we really wanted to make this change happen quickly. And we were concerned about what might happen if the case were delayed any further.
Well, thank God that it wasn't, and thank God that this little girl went home, and we do have video. I guess you got this from her mother, is that right, Naghmeh?
Her aunt videotaped.
Her aunt. Yeah, so her aunt went with her daughter so that there was another girl there, right? She has an 8-year-old daughter, is that right?
Yes.
It's so great. And so she flew with them back to return this little girl, Rachael, to her mother. And this is a really short clip, but again, this is the moment that this little girl met her mother at the airport. And it's a tearjerker. Again, it is really short. I'm going to play it again just because that is so short. And you've also supplied us with some pictures that we have of the two of them and just loving on each other there in the airport. And this little girl seems so happy. And she has a brother. Does she have other siblings?
She has a brother. Nilüfer has other relatives in Turkey, but her brother she was very close with, which is when I first met Rachael. She seemed very drawn to Jacob, which I couldn't understand why, because usually little girls are drawn to like older girls, but she was really drawn to a brother. And later I discovered, she has a brother that she's missing. That's why she's really drawn to Jacob, my son.
How old is Jacob now?
He's 18.
18. Oh my goodness.
Even
My
when
goodness.
even when they arrived in Turkey, we FaceTimed them,
Yeah.
and she saw Rebecca. She was kind of acting shy, like not wanting to look at the camera. As soon as she saw Jacob, he's like, Jacob. She was excited,
Oh,
but I didn't know why. But then I realized, wow, there's a brother. She's been
yeah.
raised with a brother, and that's been her world, was having a
Mm,
brother.
mm. So this whole story is really a remarkable story because again, this little girl, 3.5 years old, is in the United States. How on earth does she get an advocate like Naghmeh Panahi? Talk about how it is that you got involved with this, and you even met this little girl.
Really, God, Saeed had
Mm,
vowed not to return to Boise because he'd
mm,
been arrested so much. He thought everyone was against him in Boise. I He ended up coming to my daughter Rebecca's graduation from high school.
mm-hmm,
When I saw Rachel, she didn't look. She looked neglected, not well kept, as a mom would take care of a child. She looked afraid. It was, I think, it was the first 6 months that she'd been in the U.S.
mm,
She wouldn't make any eye contact. She was. She I My uncle actually took a photo. You can see she's just distraught. She's
mm,
doesn't look good. But I have to tell you, I think this case has also been God doing a work in my heart, because my
mm,
initial reaction, because I knew Said had a child, I didn't know it was a girl from a girlfriend, and my initial gut reaction was not my problem. I fought for my kids.
mm,
Um, Not want to touch this one. I had family members that said, don't touch this one. It's not your problem. Because initially there's like this feeling of like a child of a girlfriend of my ex-husband, like, I'm not going to touch it. But it was stayed in my mind. I
mm.
didn't tell anyone, but it was a few days later when Rebecca was weeping in her bedroom, and she
Oh,
was saying, Mom, we need to find her mom. She didn't know if her mom was alive. She said, Mom, she really misses her mom. I don't know what happened. They were talking about police. Said was talking about police in Turkey. She's like, I can't make sense of what happened, but can you find her mom? So
mm,
by God's grace, about a year earlier, I was
mm,
in contact with a pastor, and he had said, Naghmeh, I don't want your feelings hurt, but I've heard through the grapevine. He's a Christian pastor that works with
mhm,
Christian refugees. He said, I think Said has a girlfriend and they have a baby together. And so I'd
mm,
heard that, but then I saw Rachel in flesh and blood, and it was a little bit of a gut reaction of, but then when my daughter was weeping and crying, saying, find her mom, I reached out to that pastor, and within moments, well, it took like a few hours. I gave my phone number. I told the pastor to give my phone number if once he finds Rachel's mom to her. And within a couple hours, I got a call that's just wailing and crying, and
oh,
I didn't know what to do. I've given up all hope. I just can't believe that you want to help me. And um, she was just wailing, crying, screaming. She said, I don't know how to get her back. I don't know what to do. I've tried everything. I don't know what to do.
mm,
So that's when our journey began. She had been trying and trying. And as Devin said, we didn't know that there was
mm,
like if it extended to a certain time, side that there was this argument that she's well adjusted. It's 2 years has
mm,
passed, and Saeed admitted to an email that he had initially gotten a lawyer, and he had advised Saeed to just try to keep Rachel in the U.S. as long as
mhm.
possible. And so we didn't know that there was this timeline, but yeah, a year ago she was wailing, crying. She didn't know what to do. She had,
This is
um,
her mother that you're
yeah,
talking about.
Rachel's
Yeah,
mom. So that
Nilüfer.
was Nilüfer. That was my initial contact with her. Was just the first few minutes. She was just
Yeah.
crying, wailing. I don't know what to do. I can't believe you're helping me, and you tried to
Mm.
find me. Yeah,
Oh my goodness, that just, again, I'm just thinking of my baby girl, and we were
Mhm.
like this. We're still kind of like that, but I
They
just,
were like that. It was her
yeah.
girl. She has a son.
Oh, hmm,
I have a son and a daughter. Relationship with the son is different. The relationship with the daughter is different. But they had this very special bond. Even
mm,
Said travels a lot. He was barely in her life, and even
mm,
times where Said would want to go pick her up from daycare. Rachel would scream and yell and wanted her mom to pick her up. So there was
mm,
not this close relationship with her dad. And she was very much attached to her mom. Even now that she's returned, I've talked to Niloufar a few times. Rachel's right there. Where are you going, Mom? What are you doing? She won't let her go. She'll sit in
Oh.
front of the bathroom.
Oh.
She will. One time she woke up and her mom was in the shower and she was crying. Where did she go? Where is she? She was like running around the
Oh,
house.
she's
And
frantic.
her aunt had to open the shower door and say, she's right here. We'll wait
Yeah.
right here until she comes out. Like they've had to wait for her. Like,
Mm.
yeah. So yeah, she was 3.5, taken to a new country on a long flight from
Wow.
Turkey. And then they lived like transiently. He was traveling for like a year nonstop, like 1,000 cities. Is that what he said, Devin?
He had claimed that he had traveled to 1,000 cities, that he'd spent $1.5 million doing it, and that they were in this RV, and that's what
Wow.
they'd been doing.
They're living in an RV?
Which that was my other daughter's concern. She said there's no air conditioning in the RV. And the site had said it's broken. Only after we sent the Boise police for welfare check did he start fixing his air conditioning. So there was an RV in Boise weather of 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer.
Wow.
And no air conditioning. So Saeed would take her to parks, which was also extremely hot. No kids to play with. Rachel would get very tired and just always outside. Sometimes he'd take her into the mall. Like my daughter said, she looked unkept, but then she said the first night they got together, they ordered a large pizza, good enough for like 4 people, like a huge pizza. She said Rachel took and started eating all of it. This is 5, 6 in the afternoon for dinner. A little 4-year-old at that time is eating the entire pizza. She said, Mom, I don't know when he was feeding her. She seemed very hungry and she ate the entire pizza. Like me and Jacob couldn't even have a slice. So those were some of her worries. It was the air conditioning. It was she seemed hungry. She seemed unkept. And
so Saeed allowed Rebecca and Jacob obviously to visit her like at the place. Did she come to your place as well, or
no?
No, just at her place, at his RV.
At his RV. Yeah, they would visit. He wanted some kind of a relationship with Rebecca and Jacob, and I had allowed it. He'd come back to Jacob's life when Jacob was 14, and he was at an age where he needed a dad, so I allowed it. And then he came back for Rebecca's. Then he disappeared as he always does, and then came back during Rebecca's graduation, and that's when we met Rachel. And Rebecca and Jacob loved her as their own sister. So they got to see her at the RV. They got to see her condition, and we got the Boise police involved. We got FBI involved, but they kept saying like he hasn't broken any American law. We don't know what to do. But the police officer, which I remembered recently, is named Devin, the same name, because Niloufar kept sending emails to this Devin, her lawyer, and she kept saying there's no response. And then finally she got a response from Devin Ellis saying, I think you're sending your emails to the wrong person. I was like, they're both named Devin. So interesting that God would introduce us to a police officer, a detective in Boise named Devin. And he pointed us in the right direction, said, get all the documents translated officially, get it notarized, get the Hague Convention stuff, get the child kidnapping, he told us what to get, which ended up being useful for court. Yeah.
So help me understand too. My understanding is when you contacted that Turkish pastor and contacted Niloufar, you also learned some information about what Saeed had done in Turkey that probably prompted him to flee the country very quickly. Tell us about that.
That's what she told me. She said he fled. And I said, well, she said he was fleeing court hearings. I said, what? She said, let me send you some documents. And so I realized he had several domestic violence hearings that December of 2024, that he had fled those. And the following year in 2025, early, like in the spring, he had a few court hearings. But one of them was a court hearing for being charged with molesting a Turkish girl, minor Turkish girl. And so that was what he was afraid of the most, that he admitted, I think, during the court hearing for Niloufar, that he was afraid he was going to get 20 years plus. And that's why he fled. But that's when I learned about that. and I was not surprised
Hmm.
because I have received multiple messages in the US of crimes he's committed here that people haven't reported yet. But I was not surprised that he's committed multiple crimes in Turkey.
Hmm. And again, a lot of, I hate to bring this up because this isn't about you, although it's like these are the things that you said and you got so much backlash for, and the Christian community came after you, and some people like openly called you a liar. Like, why didn't you say this earlier? Totally misunderstanding the grooming process, and I think also the process of growing up in a country where women are treated without rights, without respect, in a culture where misogyny is just rampant. And
And
so,
a culture that grooms women to accept that.
right, right. And
Mhm.
for you, like when you realized it was abuse, which I'm just like, especially when you described like the time he beat you and you're looking in the mirror and you have like literally bulging, you know, bumps on your face all over and you're black and blue. And you're still not realizing I'm a battered wife, you know. And it really wasn't until somebody gave you that language, and I've seen it with so much abuse that some of it can be physical, emotional, spiritual abuse until somebody names it. The person who is the victim of it, who has been groomed to accept it, doesn't see it. And so to me, it made perfect sense. But I, again, for him to have these domestic violence
Mhm.
and now this, molesting, at least the charge of
Mhm.
molesting
Mhm.
an underage girl, it's it is. This is his character that you
This is
tried
yes.
to say. Yeah. I mean, how does that feel for you to I mean, you would hope that people would come back and apologize. I don't know that anyone has, but
No. No. Uh, I was vindicated, and I also that by having this out, other people would be protected if they Googled his name or
yeah.
there was something that other women could say, wait a minute, there's all this stuff, which eventually Niloufar discovered about him
Hmm.
when she was able to use because I was the first person to say it, and the Christian community turned on me because he was such a hero. I think it was made it easier for Niloufar to say, "Look at the past. He was going to kidnap his
Mm-hmm.
kids." Like I think Devin,
Mm-hmm.
some of the things from my case helped. Correct?
Oh, absolutely. But, I think maybe a piece that we haven't really talked about yet, Naghmeh, is, we talk about, learning about abuse and what abuse is and what you had been through and how your journey through your divorce prepared you to be a bridge for Niloufar. Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you realized how helpful the information you provided us was, how the context you provided it with was so helpful for preparing the case. Because
Mm-hmm.
in representing Niloufar, she has no experience whatsoever with the Western legal system.
Mm-hmm.
How confusing it must be for a mom to be told your child can be abducted, and the abductor can say, essentially to a court, well, I abducted them, but they're doing great now. So I
Mm-hmm.
should just be able to keep them. That is an available defense. That is so hard for somebody to understand. And as lawyers, we have to put on these sterilized stories. And the information we need isn't necessarily the information that seems is going to be relevant or seems that it's going to turn the case. But Naghmeh, because your experience, in both worlds,
Mm-hmm.
understanding
Mm-hmm.
an international legal system, but also understanding how the American legal system can be so sterilized and how we need the information and ABCD 1, 2, 3, very well organized, I think was so helpful to getting us to this result. And you only knew that because of what you'd been through in your life.
Yes, I went through there was so much information that I had to organize it in folders. Like, here's the charges in Turkey. Here's like
Mm-hmm.
him having PTSD that was, talked about. Here's the court, what happened. So I helped her organize because she didn't initially when she was contacting the police, she was just sending him all sorts of stuff, translated, not translated. So to get these and say, this is actually important. This is not towards the end, she was sending me a lot of her abuse stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
those were the ones I actually couldn't translate anymore. I mean, it was too much of what the violence he had done
Mm-hmm.
against her and her son. And I
Mm.
actually had a little bit of anxiety attack doing it. And I emailed Devin. I said, I'm sorry, I can't translate. And I told her, I said, I don't think the focus should be domestic abuse right now. I think it's really trying to get Rachael, like, we can translate so much about the domestic abuse against you
Mm.
and your son, but let's focus on this. Let's get, like, a lot of the videos he did, the court order videos, like, she would send them to me. I would say, "Oh, Devin needs to see this," especially the one you used in court, and I would translate it and tell, so that you had an idea what the video was saying. So if you wanted, like, the court to translate it, so I would say, Devin needs to know what this video says. This is important, and because one of them, he admitted, like, Rachael wanted to go home. Rachael, he was getting her ready to go home, and you talked about that in court. And one of it, he's like, I'm tired of you and you've cost me so much. And he just says things in the video that ended up being useful. It was the video call between her and Nilüfer, and Nilüfer started
Mm.
becoming more, I guess, wise. She started recording everything. She even does it
Mm.
now, but she started recording everything so
Mm.
that, it wasn't her words against his. She had a document of what he said.
Yeah, I'm somewhat surprised in some ways that he abducted this girl because he doesn't seem like the kind of man that wants to take care of children, wants the inconvenience of children. And I mean, I don't know that we can speak to motive, but I mean, it makes me wonder, was this punishment for to Nilüfer? Was this just a power move? Was he actually attached to this girl in some way? I mean, I don't know that we know. I mean, I don't know if you have any insight to that. But that part did surprise me just a little bit. I don't know if that surprised you, Naghmeh.
Yeah, I don't know. He has, looking back at how he behaved towards Nilüfer and her son
Hmm.
and Rachael, he was not a caretaker. He was traveling. When he was home, there was some really horrible video. I mean, he's just having her take care of everything. He's not someone who likes to take care of a child. So for me, maybe it felt like what he was going to do to me, maybe more of a
Mm-hmm.
revenge towards Nilüfer. I don't know, but he's not the kind that would stay around. I mean, the moment the court hearing finished, he's out in another country. He likes to travel. He doesn't like taking care of kids. He doesn't like being around and doing the feeding and school. And he wasn't actually, Devin mentioned that in court, he actually didn't register for school or even get a house until he knew he had to, after he got notified by the US government that Nilüfer was trying to get her daughter back, is when he actually, like, put her in school and did things like that.
So the team that you put together, you have Nilüfer. Um, Devin, you came later. Initially, it was Nilüfer's sister, is it? That's on
Yes,
the West Coast. So you kind of put together this team, but you don't know the first thing. I mean, I wouldn't know the first thing. Maybe you did know the first thing, but I didn't know the first thing. I wouldn't know the first thing about how to secure the return of an abducted girl, especially with all of the complications that you're talking about. Um, Tell me how you ended up finding out, some of these things that you needed to do, the Hague Convention and getting these
Mhm.
papers together. How did you Google this, or did
No.
local police help you, or FBI,
Yes.
or yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, I didn't even know the word Hague Convention until late in 2025, end of 2025, when
Mm.
Nilüfer got a letter from the US, from saying that she could actually try to get help with an attorney through State Department, US State Department. So I didn't even know the
Mm.
word Hague Convention, but the police officer in Boise, or the detective Devin, said, like, there needs to be some kind of a child abduction filing that she does in
Mm.
Turkey. And Nilüfer had already done that. She just, like, she hadn't provided those documentation because she didn't know what we needed. She was just sending
Mm.
information all over. So the
Yeah.
police officer basically helped us organize. This is what you need, and you need
Okay.
to get. So that's when Nilüfer said, "Oh yeah, I have filed something." She had I guess, like, a domestic violence. She was part of, there was a lawyer that was assigned to her in Turkey
Hmm.
because of domestic violence. And she said, I've heard about this European Union play, that they can try to get abducted children back. I've heard maybe they've gotten one child back from a country in Europe. I've never heard of any child being returned from the US. So that lawyer had told her initially, let's try this. So that's when Nilüfer had turned in the abduction papers that she had filed with the Turkish police initially when Saeed had taken her to this office, the European Union office that I guess works with the Hague Convention, and then when the police officer said that, she was actually able to get those documents translated, notarize it, and turn it in. And that's when, and then we didn't know, there was silence for months and months. And we thought,
when you say turn it in to the U.S. State Department?
She turned it in. She filed it. She had filed it with the EU, but I guess she was had to turn it in somewhere within the European Union office, and she got her lawyer to follow up what's going on. So it was around that time that the police helped us, that we were able to go through the process where I guess that's when that office started reviewing the abduction case. And then it was approved, but we didn't know. And then the U.S. government contacted Nilüfer in December of 2025. I think it was towards the end of 2025. And that's when they had contacted Saeed saying Nilüfer wants her back.
So let's bring in the expert. I can tell Devon's there saying,
you probably know more.
She's on the edge of her seat wanting to explain this process.
I don't know that. Yeah. Go ahead.
So explain the Hague Convention, how this works. And again, at this point, you weren't involved, but you understand the process of what needs to happen. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So a number of countries have signed this international treaty that says, if a child is abducted into our country, we will help you return that child. And so there's a central authority in every country that will help facilitate the paperwork. So Nilüfer started the paperwork in Turkey. It gets processed in Turkey, then it gets sent over to the U.S. State Department, and they see what they can do with the paperwork. So in November of 2025, the United States State Department sent Saeed a letter asking for a voluntary return of the child. And, he spewed some nonsense back and didn't return the child. But it seems that sort of made him start thinking a little bit more strategically, trying to take advantage of this well-settled child defense. And that's when Rachael started being or minor child started being engaged in, activities. It hadn't really been enrolled in anything prior to that. And, that did sort of kick him into some sort of gear at that point. But ultimately, if they're not able to get a voluntary return of the child, they will try to find an attorney. And, not every one of these cases gets won. Not every single one of them goes to trial. So just because that happens doesn't mean that's the end of the game, but we had to take this pretty much, as far down the road as we can, through the trial ultimately. And, he didn't.
Let me ask you one question about that. When you say they try to find an attorney, the State Department finds an attorney, the Hague Convention, who exactly is in charge of finding an attorney?
Sure. So, it's ultimately the petitioner's responsibility, Nilüfer, the abducted, the parent of the abducted child, and of course they're on their back foot in the American legal system. So the Hague Convention kind of recognizes that you are required, every country as a signatory is required to have what's a central authority. The State Department does that. And they will reach out to attorneys to see if attorneys can take the case. And when they contacted us, we were in a good position to be able to take the case. I had declined one earlier this year, and but we were just in a really good position with what I had on my workload, with the resources we had at the team, and I felt like we could take it on and tackle the project, and we were delighted to do so.
And Naghmeh, didn't you say when you first contacted Devon, you were on vacation? And you actually, on vacation, responded. Is this correct?
Yeah.
Well, I believe Naghmeh, if that's what she said, but I do remember this case coming in, and I, thought about it, and I emailed the State Department right away and said, I wanted to investigate, and that, we were interested in helping, in this case. And we didn't understand the facts. We didn't understand the facts were going to be so heart-wrenching. These cases run a wild gamut, so you could have a parent who just has telephone access to their child and, a parent moves away, and you could still create a Hague Convention case based on those facts. And maybe that's somewhat sympathetic, but that's not as heart-wrenching as, taking a child away from their primary caregiver who they're used to living with, when the child is 3.5 years old. I mean, these were just really dramatic facts. And given what we knew about the situation, I think we were always really concerned seriously about Rachel's well-being.
Very, very. So I think State Department contacted Devin a few months before we reached out, correct? Because
Yeah.
Nilüfer had lost. Initially, State Department had given, I say us because I was involved in all the Nilüfer. They'd given Nilüfer a name of an attorney, but that attorney had taken 4 months and had never confirmed or asked questions that I felt like he needed to ask to be able to move forward with the case. So I was starting to get anxiety. I didn't know that if Saeed prolonged it longer, he could have actually kept Rachel. But I was on a prayer walk. I was getting very anxious. I said, this is not going anywhere with this attorney. He hasn't even confirmed if he is Nilüfer's attorney. I messaged Nilüfer. I said, write this email, ask State Department to introduce another attorney, because this attorney was even someone from State Department had emailed him, and he'd even responded like, I don't know if you're spam or you're trying to like, he was just like, it was just very confusing. He wasn't even responding well to State Department, it seemed like, according to an email they forwarded to Nilüfer. So I'm so glad that now I know it was God's perfect timing, because what if we were the case that Devin had rejected because it was not the perfect timing? It seems like it came, even though it felt like it came late, because the State Department had given Nilüfer the contact information in November, and this attorney by March hadn't done anything. But maybe if we would have first reached out to Devin, she had been, it would not have been the right timing, and it would have been rejected. But so Nilüfer had asked for a new attorney, and she had not checked her email. It had gone to her spam. And so I kept saying, because I kept calling, there's a website to try to find attorneys. I kept calling and trying to find an attorney that would take on this case. And they were all saying, no, no, no. And then I said, Nilüfer, can you please check your email, talk to your Turkish lawyer? Like, has State Department not recommended another attorney? Like, I feel like this is getting late. And she finally found the email by her Turkish attorney that had emailed her and said, you have, and we had passed the deadline. It says, like, I guess she had 2 weeks to reach to the attorney in the US and say, would you be willing to take my case? I said, the 2 weeks had actually, sat on it for 10 days. Her lawyer had it for a few days. So she technically hadn't had it for 2 weeks. I said, maybe they'll take it still. So she sent the email, and I guess it was God's perfect timing for Devin to take it. And from the start, I remember, I have the emails I was reading through. Devin, you were on vacation. You were like, I'm on vacation, but I'm looking at this case. This is like, I was like, wow, she's really committed. And a lot of the questions she was asking, because of my past experience, I was like, she knows what she's doing. I told Nilüfer, I was like, this is the questions I've been wanting, like this lawyer that initially was introduced to us to ask. Like, she was asking all the right questions. But we hadn't been able to actually find, we reached out to Devin in May. We'd only been able to find Saeed's address towards the end of March. So that was actually perfect timing as well. We already had an address of where we knew he lived. And I had a friend in Lynchburg, the team. I want to talk about the team. I had a friend in Lynchburg who found his address. She lives there. She helped host Nastaran and her daughter while they were in Lynchburg, which helped us bring down. It was not this. Yeah. So I had a friend in Lynchburg who helped host Nilüfer's sister, Nastaran, and her daughter, because we were trying to budget and not have to pay for a hotel. And she was also able to protect them and take them to the court and back, do all the stuff that needed to be done. And she's the one that found the address for us. We had neighbors who helped. And, I don't want to go because they're still helping. But just people in Lynchburg, the community in Lynchburg came alongside and was messaging me like, Saeed's doing this, Saeed's doing that, he's doing this.
Why Lynchburg? What's your connection there?
Well, I also spoke at their convocation, Liberty University.
I won't hold it against you, Naghmeh.
This is a long time ago.
Yeah, it was before probably a lot of us knew
Saeed's
what was happening there.
Well, Saeed's connection to Liberty University comes through me. I mean, his sister got a full
Hmm.
ride at Liberty because of me stepping
Hmm.
in and asking for it. And she ended up getting an apartment, and
Hmm.
all her
Hmm.
housing was covered by me.
So you would
Um,
have spoken there back when you were advocating for his release,
mhm.
right? Before
20,
2016.
2015.
Yeah, okay, that
Hmm.
makes sense. And
Yeah.
I actually know a lot of people from Liberty, actually who aren't there anymore, but were at Liberty at that time too. So
Yeah.
a lot of good people. I'm sure there's still good people there.
So
Just
I had
yeah.
a community there that
Hmm.
stepped in and said, "We'll find," that they gave me a lot of information that I think it was useful for Devin. Maybe
Hmm.
like they just there was a lot of people in Lynchburg that were telling me what Saeed was doing, where he was at,
Hmm.
everything that there was a lot of good information that they were providing, and
Yeah.
yeah,
So you got a little taste of being an investigative reporter is what
yes.
happened. Yeah. So
And then the community. I mean, we didn't know if we financially had the means to be able to fly Rachel back. And
hmm.
Nilüfer actually one night had a panic attack. She was hospitalized because we were so close in getting her daughter, but we
Yeah.
didn't have the finances to get her back. And there was a lot of hurdles we had to jump through to even get her sister to be able to come and take her daughter back. And so there was a few times where like we're so close to getting the judgment, but will there be someone to take her back? Will
Mm.
we have enough funds to fly her back? And hundreds of people donated. And within a week, I mean, I had so many people that came alongside, donated and
Mm.
helped, and we used mileage points, and it came together within a week, and it was amazing.
Well, I know you, Naghmeh, and I know this isn't the first time you've personally advocated for people that have been in dire straits, and I know that you pull out of your own finances on
Mm-hmm.
several occasions to help people out, and it's a beautiful thing to do. It's a beautiful thing to be able to connect with the Christian community and see people rally behind a cause like that, and that's wonderful. Uh, I'm just wondering, how were you able to hire a lawyer when you have, I mean, Nilüfer doesn't have any funds, right? Um,
And my funds, to be honest, was pretty depleted because of the war happening in Iran. I'd
hmm.
sent so much help to the Iranian people personally. And then there was a whole bunch of refugees that I helped personally in Turkey. So I felt that's why I initially, and Devin can explain, they are hoping to uh, get some of those funds back from Saeed, but Devin has not been paid yet.
Hmm.
Devin and her team. She has an amazing team, so she hasn't been paid yet. We did initially um, send a few $1,000s to for court documentation, translation, all of
Hmm.
that, and that was initially an obstacle where Nilüfer and her sister Nasrin were like, "We can't do this." I'm like, "We got to do this. I'll pay for it.
Hmm.
Like, I'll send you the money. Like, we've got to do this." They're like, "We don't have any money." And so even gathering that amount of a little bit of upfront just for court costs, they couldn't do it. And Saeed knew that. Um, you know, I think he was shocked I was involved recently. He told Nilüfer that Naghmeh doesn't like you. Who likes an ex-girlfriend? Don't trust
Hmm.
her. But I don't think Saeed thought I would be involved. But he knew Nilüfer had no finances.
Hmm.
She's working two jobs as a refugee. Her sister, her hands were tied financially. I had a little bit of cushion, but the flight start scaring me because I was getting into debt. Um,
Hmm.
and I realized, wow, this could be a $20,000, thing getting her back just
Hmm.
for last minute flights in July,
Hmm.
international flights. It was crazy. And, but yeah, I start going into debt, but that's when someone suggested, why don't you do a fundraiser? I usually don't like to, a lot of the help, that actually my daughter gave 500.
Oh.
But they're like out of their working money, they gave me money. They each gave me, and my mom.
Oh.
So it's like I had my whole family donating to this. But yeah, initially I think Said didn't think she knew she didn't have the finances, and she didn't know what to do in the US. But
Hmm.
God brought the police officer. God's biggest blessing to us was Devin.
Hmm.
She is the best lawyer. I've worked with, many lawyers, And just the questions she asked, the way she presented everything in court, and her team, she has an amazing team. So, but it all came together, and it was a point where I was starting to freak out. Like, this is a lot of financial, because like I said, it was at a time where Iran's at war with the US. I've already sent so much funds to the Iranian people who are, that's another story. They're suffering. Then there's refugees in Turkey. And then this Nilüfer case came up, and I was like, we got to fund this. Has to happen. I don't know how, but it's got to happen.
So, and often people don't feel very sympathetic towards lawyers, but I will say lawyers that are good, I have worked with, I have one on my board. They work super, super hard. And when they take kind of these kind of cases, which are the most needing an advocate, because these people have so little resources, it often means they have no assurance of getting paid, and you guys have to eat too. You have to, and to your credit, you took a case. I'm guessing you have some cases that are sure paying cases, and you have some that aren't. And you took this case because you cared. It sounds like, about this little girl and about justice and about her mother. And so I'm just curious, how much money remains that needs to be raised to pay off legal fees and all these other things?
Well, that's kind of the next stage in the process. So the judges entered an order earlier this week instructing us to put in our, attorney's fees request. And Saeed could be held responsible for paying these legal fees to us.
Wouldn't that be nice?
So,
Yes.
that's the next stage in the process. And, fingers crossed that goes well. And you talked about our team, and I did want to take, a moment just to recognize the other people who worked on this case, because it was not just me. I had a wonderful co-counsel, Emily Sitzler. She is a family law and divorce attorney here that I work with, and she spent so much of her career working with children. We brought her in specifically for her work with children. I do a lot of work with finance in divorce, and that's really my strong suit, but she really had the heart that we thought we might have to interview Rachael in the courtroom. Rachael was eventually appointed her own attorney, but when we thought we were going to have to do that, Emily was prepared to jump in and do that with a soft touch. And then we had a number of law clerks. I mean, we had a really strong team of students who are working with us throughout the summer from Washington and Lee and Liberty University working on this case. And, they were there for every hearing, and contributed a ton in getting us organized for this trial. So we had Caitlin, Laura, Helena, Allie, and then, of course, we had our paralegal, and we kept joking. We had, an international team, because my paralegal is actually a Chilean lawyer. So she was working on the case, and one of our law clerks is a Taiwanese lawyer. So we kept joking, here we are, the international legal team here, with so many different countries represented.
Wow. And when you hear people coming together to do something like this, we report so many bad stories. I hate to say it, but there's also an incredible team that often does come together in these situations. And I have often said that I report on some of the worst of the worst, but I also get to work with the best of the best, which is true, because in so many investigations of the investigations that I do, it's these courageous, selfless, self-sacrificing, beautiful people that get behind truth and justice and seeing that these things happen. And it sounded like it happened here. And so that's just a beautiful thing. And all of you folks that were just named, you know who you are. And we just say thank you for what you did for this little girl. And we hope you get paid. And it would be beautiful if it comes from Saeed, but you're storing up for yourself treasures in heaven. That really, I truly believe that is true. And sometimes we forget that, and we think that what happens here is everything. And I think this is a good reminder that it's not, and nothing is forgotten that you do. And Jesus said, anything that you do to the least of these, you have done to me. And so this is the least of these. And we have so many heartbreaking stories of things happening to refugees, and to see Christians step up and care for those who can't care for themselves is really, really a beautiful thing. I am curious, Devin, how widespread is like how frequently do these type of stories happen? Because to me,
Mm,
this is just absolutely heartbreaking.
Well, I think so many people don't know that they can do anything when this happens. I mean, it would have been so easy
Mm,
for Nilüfer to throw her hands up in the air, and there are so many
hmm
opportunities to do that. And I think there are about 300 cases like this a year in the United States. Um, but I don't think that takes into account, the thousands of people who just don't speak the language and just can't think
mm,
about what to do, in a completely foreign legal system. And how it just seems hopeless.
mm,
And Nilüfer had to fight for a really long time, to be
mm,
able to be here. So, I mean, it's unfortunate. The law takes a while to catch up with you in these circumstances, which is
hmm
unfortunate as well. But hopefully we can give some hope to anybody else who might be going through this scenario, that
mm,
ultimately, when you hold people accountable in the
mm.
American legal system, there is a chance that you're going to get a just result. And I'm so glad that we were able to get one here in this case.
mm. And that's
Yeah,
one of I was just going to say that's one of the beautiful things about the United States of America. We do a lot of things wrong, but we have an incredible system of a legal system. It's not perfect. It has a lot of problems too, but I
mm,
I I would rather be in a court in the United States than probably just about anywhere else in the world. And
yes.
I'm very
Amen.
grateful to the country that we live in and very grateful for the legal system we have, which, by the way, was founded, I think, in large part on a belief in God and Judeo-Christian values. And so I
Mm.
am very grateful. But Naghmeh, you wanted to say something to that.
I just want to say for me, it was a story of miracle and encouragement to me because
Mm,
like I work with so much need and
hmm
heartache, like I said, especially now in the with the war and what's happening. Just war brings some kind of there's a lot of economic chaos.
hmm
There's a lot. So dealing with that, and you want to solve everyone's problem, but then this is one that God just used to encourage me
mm,
because Nilüfer could have thrown up her hands and given up. We there was times where we're like, is there anything that can be done? And if she doesn't know very much English. By God's grace, she had a sister in the U.S. that could become her take legal action for her and speak on her behalf and take her daughter back. But there was times where it just seemed like we were hitting one roadblock after another and nothing was going to happen and she wasn't going to see her daughter ever again. And she didn't give up. Nilüfer didn't give up, and she kept going, and we kept going. And Julie, you're an example of this. You hear so many there's so many stories out there that's just negative, and it's just like is anything good happening? And then there's wins that I've
hmm
seen through Julie Roy's reporting that there's wins there. You're like, wow, that
hmm
actually happened. That actually got some results. Like
I
that's
know it's beautiful
amazing.
when that happens. It's
Yeah.
so heartening. And you do
So
need those wins every now and then. You really
yeah, and I
do.
think you get it. And I see it, like I said, with you don't give up. I'm sure there's so much attack on what you do, and Devin, the same with you. And then you get a win, and you're like, okay, I can keep going. I can keep helping. There's going to be, and the way it came together, it's just
Mm,
the people that needed to come together to make this happen. And it was a community. At
mm,
the end, the final push of getting her home, the finances that was needed. Um, you know, Nilüfer wanted to get her some furniture. I had friends that helped her do that.
mm.
Ended up sending her some money to be able to get Rachel's room ready for her, to get her
Oh,
shampoo and toothbrush and
mm,
some toys, and just the whole community coming together to make this her return to her mom so much easier. Now she's got a lot of trauma that they're dealing with, but
mm.
just to see a win, like
Yeah,
Julie, just to see a win,
yeah,
you're like, okay, I can do this. I can do more of this. It gives you more energy. Like it fuels you to keep going.
it sure does. And I know you had been working with Back to Jerusalem and involved with Iranian churches, and I know you stepped back for some time and um, just needed to sort of catch your breath. And then in the midst of this happened.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, is there anything that happened during the trial or during this entire process that stood out that you'd like to mention and make sure that we don't miss in this podcast?
Well, I had one of those little moments in this trial that's just of great satisfaction to a lawyer because Mr. Abedini was trying to say that the minor child was so well settled in the United States, she didn't speak her mom's language anymore. So how could we send this child back to another country where she can't, speak to her mom anymore? And on the face of it, that sounds somewhat compelling. And then we took a break for lunch in the courtroom. And in walks, his daughter, and they start talking to each other in Farsi. And the whole courtroom is there, to see this, even though the judge is off the bench. And that was just a very satisfying moment. And I felt like you could just really see in there how flimsy the defense was on this case.
Wow, that's stunning. What a lapse in thought to be able to to do something like that. But isn't that something, how your sins will find you out, right? I mean, you can say a lie and you can get caught in it. And wow, that's terrific. Fantastic that happened. What's next for Naghmeh Panahi? Or are you trying to figure that out yourself?
This was my sabbatical, but
This is what
this
she
was
does on her sabbatical. They
this is
crunch
when
you
I
up.
said this year's my, but actually it was God's perfect timing to step back from Back to Jerusalem in ministry
Hmm.
because my mom got extremely sick. I've been taking care of
Mm.
her since January, and there's another thing with that, and then the Rachel thing happened. So it was like I knew that my schedule had to be opened up for Rachel and to take care of my mom and things that were coming up that were not necessarily normal ministry stuff. But yeah, I that's what I'm doing right now. So I don't know what's next. I would
I,
love to like help with the Julie Roy's team somehow. I love what you do. So
oh, well, thank
Come
you.
out to
And
Virginia. I mean, I want to have a meal with Naghmeh after this. We've talked so much on the phone. So,
well, we've
yeah.
had that lovely opportunity. You've been in my home when you came out for the Restore conference, and that's been really lovely. I hope to see you at the next Restore in the Dallas area. Um,
I'm That's usually around my birthday in February. I was planning on coming this year. This is the first year I've missed. But my mom, hopefully, there's going to be a surgery happening in the fall that's going to help my mom feel better. So
yeah, well,
she's
we
got some
we
back
actually
issues.
postponed the conference. We were going to have it this past spring, and then we postponed it till February.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Long story. We found out the church where we were planning on holding it, there was stuff they needed to deal with, and they were starting an investigation due to some stuff we found out. And so we just realized we need a neutral venue. So we're going to be at the Plano Event Center, which is an incredible venue. But I hope you can come. That'd be really
Yes.
lovely. And Devin, you're invited as well. One of the few venues or few conferences, actually the only one I know of where people that have been wounded in church
Mm.
settings or religious
Oh,
experiencing
so good.
religious trauma. It is really amazing. It's an amazing community that just kind of ministers to each other. It's really a cool thing. But I'm curious, Devin, did you sense throughout this whole thing that there was providence at work behind everything that happened?
well, absolutely. And, this is my
Mm.
little God moment, in this whole thing. And it's going to sound so small, but sometimes that's where those moments are. We've been rebranding our law firm, and we used to have this like S logo. And I've decided, I went to London and I loved the end of courts, and we were going to use the Pegasus logo that we see so much. And I got those final tickets, just the confirm receipt for those final tickets for Rachel to go home, and it was Pegasus Airlines, and it was just like it was just a little divine sign, that we were on the right path, and this was the path we were supposed
Wow.
to be on. So
That is
Wow.
insane. I
That
didn't
is
know
pretty
that.
cool. Well, to both of you, both remarkable women. And I'm so glad because this win wasn't just a win for you. Most importantly, it's a win for a little girl who now
Mhm.
is going to have a much different future because she could be with her mother, and for her mother who, oh my goodness, the joy this mother must feel. Um, and you
She
had a
calls me
part in
every
that.
night. I
Oh,
want to say
does she
this.
really?
She's
Oh,
holding Rachel. She calls me every night. She's like, I can't believe I'm holding her. I can't believe I'm
oh,
holding. She's like,
oh.
every night she's holding her and she sends me a message or she calls me. She's like, I'm holding Rachael right now. She's sleeping on me. And
Oh,
yeah.
oh. I sometimes get a call. There was like a 2-week period. I got a call from my granddaughter who's 18 months old every night. And boy, children are just the joy of life. That's all I can say. They really are. And so thank you to both of you. Thanks for taking the time to tell the rest of us about this incredible story. And God bless you, Devin, in your continued work, standing up for some of the least of these. And Naghmeh, I can't wait to hear what you do next, because I just know the Lord has his hand on you, and you're going to make trouble somewhere, and it's going to be trouble in a good way. So I look forward to that. But again, thank you so much, and God bless you both.
Thank you. God bless you.
Friends, thank you so much for watching this episode of The Roys Report, a podcast dedicated to reporting the truth and restoring the church. And if you believe in our work and mission, would you please consider supporting us with a donation today? We can continue to report these important stories only with your help. And this month, we're ways behind our goal, so we could really use your donation today. To support us, just go to roysreport.com/donate. That's roysreport.com/donate. Also, if you're a survivor of church hurt or want to help create healing church spaces, please consider coming to our Restore Conference in February. This is a powerful gathering of people just like you, seeking to hold on to their faith and heal. And joining us will be a powerful slate of speakers like Chuck DeGroat, Mary DeMuth, Leslie Vernick, and yours truly. For more information, just go to restore2027.com. That's restore2027.com. Also, please subscribe to The Roys Report on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. That way, you'll never miss an episode, and while you're at it, I'd really appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word about the podcast by leaving a review. And then, please share the podcast on social media so more people can hear about this great content. Again, thanks so much for joining me today, and God bless.